Welcome to the first of our Chief Justice of the United States series, focusing on the first Chief Justice, John Jay. When the Constitution was new, the government untested, and the role of the judiciary was barely defined in Article 3. The center was John Jay, the nation's first Chief Justice. John Jay was born in 1745 in New York City, into a wealthy merchant family of Huguenot descent. Educated at King's College, today's Columbia University, Jay trained as a lawyer and quickly rose to prominence in colonial politics. He was deeply involved in the revolutionary cause, although he favored measured diplomacy over radical action. Jay's diplomatic skill became clear when, at the age of 33, he served as president of the Continental Congress in 1778, and later as negotiator of the Treaty of Paris in 1783, which formally ended the American Revolution and secured independence from Britain. When the Constitution was ratified in 1789, the federal judiciary, defined in Article 3, was almost a blank slate. President George Washington turned to John Jay to give it shape and credibility. Jay had been a strong advocate for the Constitution, co-authoring the Federalist Papers with Alexander Hamilton and James Madison. Specifically, he wrote 5 essays on foreign policy and the judiciary. His appointment as the first Chief Justice was a logical extension of his commitment to federal authority and national unity. At the time, the Supreme Court had no prestige, no building of its own, and few cases to decide. The early justices spent much of their time riding circuit, traveling across the country to preside over federal trials. Jay understood that the court's legitimacy depended not just on its decisions, but on public trust. Under his leadership, the court began asserting federal authority while avoiding political overreach that would undermine its fragile credibility. Jay cultivated an image of the judiciary as fair, independent, and bound by the Constitution, not by shifting political winds. The most significant case of Jay's tenure was Chisholm v. Georgia in 1793. The case arose when the estate of a South Carolina merchant sued the state of Georgia for payment on goods supplied during the Revolutionary War. Georgia refused to appear in court, claiming sovereign immunity, an historic precedent that sovereigns, once known as kings, could only be sued by consent. The Supreme Court, in a 4-1 decision, ruled in favor of Chisholm, holding that the states could be sued in federal court by citizens of another state. Jay, writing for the majority, emphasized that the people, not the states, were sovereign under the Constitution. This decision alarmed many, as it removed sovereign rights from the states. The response was the adoption of the 11th Amendment, which restored state sovereignty by restricting such suits. The episode showed how early court rulings could prompt swift constitutional change. While still Chief Justice, Jay accepted a diplomatic mission to Britain in 1794 to resolve lingering disputes from the Revolutionary War. The resulting Jay Treaty eased tensions, secured British withdrawal from forts in the Northwest Territory, and opened trade channels, though it was deeply unpopular with those who saw it as too conciliatory. His absence from the court during this mission was unusual, but it reflected the fluid boundaries between judicial and diplomatic service in the early Republic. In 1795, Jay resigned from the Supreme Court after being elected governor of New York. He served 2 terms, focusing on infrastructure, education, and gradual emancipation of enslaved people in the state. Although his time as Chief Justice was brief, just 6 years, Jay established enduring principles that the court was co-equal with other branches, that federal law was supreme, and that the judiciary must operate independently from partisan politics. He set the tone for a court that would, over time, grow into one of the most powerful institutions in American government. John Jay's tenure lacked the landmark constitutional transformations of later Chief Justices like Marshall or Warren. But without Jay's steady leadership at the court's birth, its authority might never have taken root. He combined the vision of a statesman with the restraint of a judge, helping to anchor the judiciary as a guardian of the Constitution. From the very first gavel strike, John Jay defined what it meant to be Chief Justice of the United States.